Imagine a young woman standing outside an airport in London for the very first time. She is shivering in the cold, clutching a small bag, and gripping a paper with an address written by someone else because she cannot read English. She tries to ask for directions, but every word she speaks falls apart in the air. People look at her with confusion. She stands there, lost, silent, almost invisible in the busy crowd. And yet, what she doesn't know is that this moment will lead her to one of the most unexpected destinies anyone from her small town in the Philippines could ever imagine. What she doesn't know is that one day, people in royal uniforms will bow to her and call her ma'am. This is the unbelievable journey of Lina, a Filipina maid with zero English, hired in London, who ends up working inside one of the most guarded residences in the world. And the strangest part, the royal staff, those trained to serve only the highest ranks, begin treating her with a level of respect even she cannot understand. Why would they bow? Why would they address her like she is someone important? What made a woman who once scrubbed kitchen floors in a province suddenly become a figure of honor in a place filled with rules, hierarchy, and tradition? Before we reach that moment, let's go back to where it all began. Lina grew up in a small barangay where people shared food, laughter, and stories, even when money was scarce. Her parents were farmers. They dreamed of sending her to school, but life got harder when her father became sick. By the time she was 16, she knew she needed to work. She cleaned houses, washed clothes, cared for kids, anything to help her family survive. But no matter how hard she worked, it was never enough. Then she heard stories of Filipinos working abroad, earning enough to send their kids to college, build homes, and give their families a better life. And like many others, she held on to this dream. But Lina faced a big problem. She did not speak English, not a single sentence, not even basic words like hello or please. But when a neighbor told her that a recruiter was looking for housemaids for a family in London, she didn't hesitate. She borrowed money for the placement fee, whispered a prayer, and hoped for a miracle. She promised her mother she would return with enough to change their future. The night before her flight, she practiced smiling in the mirror, hoping kindness would be enough when words failed. When she finally arrived in London, everything felt too big, too loud, too fast. Her employer, Mrs. Whitmore, was strict and serious. She spoke fast, and Lina understood none of it. Every instruction sounded like a storm of unfamiliar noise. She cried quietly at night, afraid she would be sent home for being useless. But she worked hard, very hard. She memorized everything by observing. She cleaned every corner until it shined, and even when she was exhausted, she tried her best to read English labels slowly, pointing at them and repeating the sounds. Sometimes she spoke to objects in the pantry as practice. She knew she sounded silly, but she didn't care. She was hungry to learn. One day, when Mrs. Whitmore heard her struggle over the word butter, she looked at her with surprise. Not anger, not impatience, but curiosity. She asked, slowly this time, "Do you want to learn English?" Lina nodded, shy and embarrassed. From then on, Mrs. Whitmore began teaching her one word every morning. Simple words like tea, clean, good, sorry, and thank you. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Months passed, and Lina improved. She became the most dependable person in the house. She learned to cook English dishes, care for delicate fabrics, and carry herself with quiet confidence. The Whitmore family grew fond of her. They even trusted her with responsibilities normally given only to senior staff. But none of that explained how she ended up inside a royal residence. That happened because of an unexpected visitor, Mrs. Whitmore's elderly mother, Lady Eleanor. Lady Eleanor was from an old noble family with deep connections to the royal household. She visited often, and she immediately took notice of Lina, not because of her English, which was still broken, but because of her kindness. Lady Eleanor liked to sit by the window with tea. Lina always placed a small biscuit beside her cup because she saw the old lady smile every time she ate one. Little things like that mattered. Lady Eleanor, who had seen all kinds of people throughout her life, knew genuine care when she felt it. One cold morning, Lady Eleanor told Lina something that made her panic. She wanted Lina to work for her full-time. Lina tried to refuse, telling her she was not ready. Her English was not good. She was scared. But Lady Eleanor simply said, "My dear, it is not your English I want. It is your heart." A few weeks later, Lina found herself entering a residence she had only seen in pictures. Guards stood straight in perfect uniforms. Doors were tall and heavy. Carpets were thick enough to hide footsteps. Every hallway seemed to whisper stories. Lena was overwhelmed. She didn't know the rules. She didn't know who was who. She didn't even know how to greet people correctly. But she remembered one thing: be respectful, always. Lady Eleanor introduced her to the other staff. These were people who had trained for years. They knew protocol, etiquette, formal procedures, and traditions. They spoke with clear accents and moved with precision. They looked at Lena with confusion. Who is this Filipino woman? Why did Lady Eleanor personally bring her in? Why did she treat her with unusual warmth? At first, Lena felt invisible again. She feared she would be dismissed for any small mistake. But she worked quietly, carefully, and with the same dedication she had always had. She polished silverware until it looked like mirrors. She arranged flowers with gentle hands. She ironed clothes with perfect folds, and she never complained ever. Slowly, the other staff began watching her. Not because she was different, but because she was doing something they admired. She put her soul into every task. One day, something happened that changed everything. Lady Eleanor fell ill. Her health declined fast, and she became weak. The staff had seen many people care for her before, but no one stayed at her side the way Lena did. Lena brought warm cloths for her hands, made soups that reminded her of home, read softly even when her English slipped, and stayed in the room even when she was supposed to be off duty. Lady Eleanor would smile every time Lena walked in. It was during this time that the household staff began treating Lena differently. They stood straighter when she entered. They addressed her with polite greetings. Some even bowed slightly, something that shocked her. She tried to look behind her the first time it happened, thinking they were bowing to someone else. But no, they were bowing to her. Why? Because Lady Eleanor, respected by everyone, trusted her completely. And in a house where tradition and hierarchy were everything, if someone of Lady Eleanor's rank treated you as important, then everyone else followed. Protocol demanded it. Respect in that household was earned, and Lena had earned it in the most human way possible. One evening, Lena walked into a hall to deliver tea, and one of the royal footmen said, "Thank you, ma'am." She froze. She didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or run. She turned around to see if he was joking. He wasn't, and soon, more staff began addressing her the same way, "Ma'am." A word she never imagined would ever be spoken to her, not in that place. Imagine this: a woman who once stood lost at an airport, afraid to speak with only a small bag in her hand, was now moving through halls where people with decades of training lowered their heads respectfully when she passed. What would you feel if you were in her position? Would you feel proud, scared, or overwhelmed? Tell me in the comments what emotion would hit you the hardest in that moment. As weeks passed, Lena became more confident. She learned the routines, the expectations, the rhythm of the household. She grew closer to Lady Eleanor, sometimes sharing stories from the Philippines, describing carabaos and fiestas and childhood games. Lady Eleanor loved every detail. She said Lena's stories made her feel alive again, like she was traveling without leaving her chair. Then came the day that changed everything once more. A member of the royal family was scheduled to visit Lady Eleanor. It was a private visit, quiet, discreet, meant to be free of public attention. For Lena, this was terrifying. She did not know how to act around royalty. She practiced her posture. She practiced her words. She told herself not to look nervous, not to make mistakes, not to accidentally say something wrong in broken English. But when the moment arrived, nothing went as she expected. The royal guest arrived, and Lena quietly carried in tea. Her hands trembled slightly, but she kept her eyes down. She placed the tray gently on the table, the way she had practiced hundreds of times. And when she turned to leave, the unexpected happened. The royal guest said, "Thank you, Mum." She nearly dropped the tray. Why would someone of royal blood call her that? She glanced at Lady Eleanor, who only smiled faintly. And this is where things begin to unfold in a direction no one, not even Lena, could have predicted. Because what followed that visit was a chain of events that pulled her deeper into a world she never thought she would enter. A world of secret traditions, hidden roles, and a surprising request that would push her into a position she could not refuse nor fully understand. Before we continue, if you're still watching and enjoying this story, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share this video. And think about this question: do you believe destiny is random, or do you believe certain people are meant to be discovered no matter where they start? Drop your answer in the comments section. Your thoughts might be more powerful than you think. From this point on, Lena's life would move even faster. After that royal visit, whispers began among the staff. They watched how the royal guest looked at her with curiosity, how Lady Eleanor smiled when Lena entered the room, how both seemed to trust her without hesitation. Lena didn't understand any of it. She didn't know she was being observed quietly, that every act of kindness she showed was being noted, that someone important was paying attention. Days later, Lady Eleanor called Lena to her room. She looked weaker than before, but her eyes were steady. She reached for Lena's hand and said something that made Lena's heart race. "My dear, I have a favor to ask you, a very important one." Lena swallowed hard. She nodded, thinking perhaps she needed to fetch medicine or prepare tea. But Lady Eleanor continued, her voice soft yet firm. "When my time comes, there's someone, I want you to look after. I cannot trust anyone else the way I trust you." Lena froze. She didn't understand. Look after who and why her? She was just a maid, nothing more. But Lady Eleanor seemed certain. And this was the moment everything shifted. The moment the story began to deepen into something far bigger than Lena's simple understanding of the world. The moment that sets the stage for the truth about why the staff bowed to her. Why even royals addressed her so respectfully. Why destiny seemed to be pulling her into a place she never imagined herself standing. And the question now is, what exactly did Lady Eleanor ask Lena to do? What secret role was she being pushed toward? And why was it her out of all possible people in the world chosen for something so unexpected? Think about what you would do if someone from a powerful family entrusted you with a responsibility tied to their legacy. Would you accept it? Would you run from it? Would you feel honored or terrified? Share your thoughts in the comments. Now let's continue the story. The days following Lady Eleanor's request felt strange for Lena. There were moments when the old lady would look at her with a kind of silent message in her eyes, as if urging her to be brave, to prepare herself. Lena wanted to ask what she meant, but her limited English made her afraid of misinterpreting something important. So she simply stayed close, offering warmth, comfort, and a presence that made Lady Eleanor smile even in her weakest hours. One evening, as rain tapped against the windows, Lady Eleanor asked Lena to bring her a small wooden box from a drawer. Lena placed it gently on the bed, noticing how carefully the old woman opened it. Inside was a delicate brooch gold with tiny stones that sparkled even in the dim light. It didn't look like normal jewelry. It felt symbolic, almost ceremonial. Lady Eleanor placed the brooch in Lena's hand. "I want you to keep this," she whispered. Lena shook her head quickly, panicked. No, I cannot, ma'am." But Lady Eleanor closed her fingers around it firmly. "You will understand soon." And just then, a soft knock sounded at the door. Lena hesitated. She stepped back, but kept the brooch hidden in her hand. The door opened gently, and in walked the same royal guest who had visited before. What happened next would change the course of Lena's life forever, and this is where the real story begins. If you want the rest of this unbelievable journey, stay with this channel, make sure to subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the continuation. But before you go, tell me in the comments, what do you think the brooch means? Why would Lady Eleanor give it to her? And what role do you think Lena is about to be pulled into? Your answers might reveal more than you think. The moment the royal guest stepped inside Lady Eleanor's room, everything seemed to slow down for Lena. She kept her eyes lowered, as she had been taught. But the brooch in her hand felt warm, almost heavy, as if it carried a responsibility she wasn't ready to understand. She quickly hid it in her apron pocket, hoping no one noticed. The royal guest, quiet and calm, approached the bed. There was something gentle about the way they spoke to Lady Eleanor, something filled with deep respect. Lena moved back toward the wall, trying to stay out of sight, hoping she wouldn't be asked anything because her English would crumble under the pressure. But then, something unexpected happened. The royal guest turned to her. "You must be Lena." She froze. Her heart raced, her palms began to sweat. She was not used to being addressed directly by someone of such high status. She nodded quickly, bowing slightly in fear she might offend. She hoped it was the right thing to do. The royal guest smiled softly, as if they understood her nervousness. Then they looked at Lady Eleanor and said, "You were right. She has the presence." Lena didn't understand. She wasn't sure she heard correctly. She was just a maid, someone who swept floors and folded clothes. What presence could she possibly have? Lady Eleanor simply squeezed her hand. "She is special," she whispered. Lena felt her throat tighten. She didn't know how to respond. She didn't know why they were saying these things. All she wanted was to help, to work, to care. She never imagined her quiet acts of kindness would lead to a moment like this. The royal guest spoke again, their voice calm. "Lady Eleanor has spoken highly of you. She says you are the most loyal and gentle person she has ever had by her side." Lena's eyes dropped to the floor. She felt embarrassed. She wanted to explain that she was nothing extraordinary, that she made mistakes, that she didn't even speak English well, but her voice stayed trapped in her chest. The royal guest continued, "Soon, certain duties will need to be reassigned. Duties that require someone trustworthy, someone humble, someone with heart." They paused, looking directly at her. "She believes that someone is you." Lena shook her head slightly, terrified. "No, I cannot. I don't know. I don't know how," she whispered, her English breaking like thin glass. Lady Eleanor smiled weakly. "You will learn, my dear. Just as you learned every word, every task. You learn with your heart." The room fell quiet. The royal guest placed a hand gently on Lady Eleanor's shoulder. "We will talk again soon," they said before turning to leave. But just before stepping through the door, they looked at Lena one more time. "Take care of her," they said softly, and then they were gone. Lena stood there in silence, unsure whether the entire moment was real or something she imagined. She slowly shifted her hand and felt the brooch in her pocket. She didn't know much about royal symbols, but she sensed it was more than just jewelry. Something important, something with meaning far deeper than she understood. Later that night, unable to sleep, she took the brooch out and studied it carefully. The gold lines were delicate, forming a shape that looked almost like a crest. She traced the small stones with her fingertip. She wondered if it was passed down through generations, if it held stories, if it represented something she wasn't supposed to know yet. Why would Lady Eleanor give her such a thing? Why entrust it to a maid from the Philippines who couldn't even pronounce half the words she heard in the halls? What do you think? If someone powerful handed you something symbolic without explaining its meaning, would you feel afraid or honored? Or maybe confused, the way Lena was? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Your answer reveals how you see responsibility and identity. Days passed, and Lady Eleanor's health continued to decline. The staff in the residence knew something was happening, but no one knew the details. They simply followed their training, keeping everything elegant, calm, respectful. Lena worked quietly, watching over Lady Eleanor, helping her sit up, feeding her small spoons of soup, warming her hands with soft cloths. The other staff members noticed Lena's devotion. They saw how Lady Eleanor responded only to her voice, how she held Lena's hand, even when she was too weak to hold anything else. The staff began stepping aside when Lena walked into a room. Some bowed slightly. Some addressed her with a respectful "ma'am," even though she insisted she didn't deserve it. But in a place built on tradition, respect was given not because of position, but because Lady Eleanor herself had elevated Lena through her trust. And in that household, the trust of someone of her rank was everything. One morning, when the light outside was faint and cold, Lady Eleanor asked Lena to open the curtains. The sky was pale blue. The world outside looked peaceful. Lena turned back to see Lady Eleanor smiling softly. "My dear, come here," she said. Lena sat beside her, holding her hand. "There is something I must tell you," Lady Eleanor whispered. "Something important. Something about your heart." Lena frowned slightly, confused. "You think you are small," Lady Eleanor said, her voice fragile. "But kindness creates space. Humility creates strength. You have both, and that is why I chose you." Lena shook her head. "But I am only maid." Lady Eleanor laughed weakly. "Only, my dear, there is nothing only about someone who changes the lives of others through love." Lena felt tears rising in her eyes. She didn't want to cry. She wanted to be strong, the way Lady Eleanor had always asked her to be. But her chest ached with emotion. Lady Eleanor continued, "Soon, you will be asked to take on a task. I know it sounds frightening now, but you will understand when the time comes." What task?" Lena whispered. Lady Eleanor smiled, but didn't answer. Instead, she reached out and touched Lena's cheek gently. "You were sent to me," she said. "I believe that with all my heart." That night, Lady Eleanor passed away peacefully. The house fell into solemn silence. Everything moved slowly. Staff members walked with quiet steps. Doors closed softly. The air felt heavy with respect. Lena felt broken. She cried in silence, afraid to let anyone see her grief. She had lost a friend, a mentor, a person who saw her heart beyond her broken English, beyond her simple background, beyond everything she thought limited her. She clutched the brooch tightly in her hand, as if holding on to the last piece of Lady Eleanor. During the days that followed, various members of the royal family arrived to pay their respects. The staff moved in perfect order, following traditional procedures. Lena stayed mostly out of sight, helping where she could, supporting the household quietly. But then something unusual happened. After one of the private memorials, a senior staff member approached her, someone who rarely spoke to maids directly. "Lena," he said in a formal tone, "you are requested in the East drawing room." She froze. Requested? People like her were never requested. They were summoned only for chores. Her heart pounded. What if she had done something wrong? What if someone discovered the brooch? What if she had broken a rule without knowing? She walked carefully through the halls, her hands trembling. When she entered the drawing room, she was stunned. Inside were three high-ranking royal officials, the same royal guest who had visited Lady Eleanor earlier, and two senior estate managers. They all turned to look at her. She immediately bowed her head, terrified. "Lena," the royal guest said softly, "please come forward." She stepped forward slowly, her knees almost shaking. The royal guest looked at her with gentle eyes. Lady Eleanor left instructions. "Very clear ones, instructions about you." Lena's breath caught. "First," they said, "she requested that you remain in this residence permanently." As part of her household legacy, Lena's eyes widened. Permanently, she had never imagined such a thing. "Second," the royal guest continued, "she has entrusted you with a symbolic duty. Something she believed only you could fulfill." She swallowed hard, her heart racing. "And third," they paused, "she left you in possession of something very important. A personal brooch that represents her role, her values, and her lineage." Lena's chest tightened. She felt the brooch's shape through the fabric of her apron pocket. "She asked that you keep it," the royal guest said, "because she believed you would carry its meaning better than anyone else." Lena slowly took the brooch from her pocket with trembling hands and offered it forward, thinking she was expected to return it. But the royal guest shook their head. "No," they said softly. "It belongs to you now." Lena felt her throat close with emotion. The royal guest stepped closer. "Lena, Lady Eleanor chose you not because of your English or your rank. She chose you because of the purity of your heart. That is something no training can teach, no title can equal, no background can diminish." The room grew still. The royal guest then turned to the senior staff. "From this day forward," they said firmly, "you will show Lena the same level of respect Lady Eleanor herself showed her." And that is why, from that moment on, every staff member bowed to her, not because she was noble by blood, not because she had a title, but because she carried the legacy of a woman whose name commanded honor. A legacy passed not to someone powerful, but to someone kind. Lena tried to decline the role. She insisted she was unworthy. Her English was poor. She was just a maid. But the royal guest shook their head gently. "Humility is your greatest strength," they said, "and that is what this position requires." From then on, Lena's life transformed. She was given special training. Not in etiquette, she already had natural grace, but in understanding traditions, symbols, household duties tied to Lady Eleanor's legacy. She learned how to handle important personal belongings, how to prepare spaces for private royal visits, how to oversee small but meaningful tasks. Tasks Lady Eleanor once cared deeply about. The staff treated her with genuine respect. Some even came to her for advice, because her calm presence made them trust her. They admired how she carried responsibility without showing pride. How she worked harder than anyone else despite her elevated role. How she stayed humble. She still cleaned. She still cared for others. She still spoke with broken English sometimes. But now, when she passed through the halls, people would step aside respectfully. They would bow lightly, They would say, "Good morning, ma'am," and they meant it. The brooch she wore only during special duties. And each time she pinned it to her uniform, she felt Lady Eleanor's kindness living through her. Years passed, and Lena never forgot her beginnings. She saved money and built her parents a sturdy home in the Philippines, just as she once dreamed. She paid for her siblings' education. She sent gifts quietly, never telling them that people in royal uniforms bowed to her in another country. She didn't want them to feel she was different. She wanted to stay grounded. One summer, her mother asked her on a video call, "Are you happy there, anak?" Lena smiled a soft, peaceful smile. "Yes, Mama," she said. "I am where I am meant to be. Imagine that." A woman who once stood lost in an airport, unable to speak English, now held a position built on trust, tradition, and legacy. A position many would never even know existed. A position earned not through power, but through kindness. If you were in Lena's place, would you stay in that life or return home for good? Which would you choose, responsibility or simplicity? Share your answer in the comments. I want to know how you see this choice. And if you enjoyed this story, if it touched your heart, if it made you believe that even the smallest acts of kindness can change destinies, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Your support helps bring more real and inspiring stories like this to people around the world. Lena's journey reminds us of something important. Greatness is not measured by where you start in life. Greatness is measured by how you treat others along the way. And sometimes, destiny bows to the kindest hearts. If you want more powerful stories like this, make sure to stay with this channel. And before you go, answer this final question in the comments. Do you believe that people like Lena are discovered by fate? Or do you believe they create their own destiny through kindness and courage? Your answer might inspire someone reading it.